is like no other acting job.
You do need a certain chutzpah to step up every morning and confront this monster.
With this new Bond, being that it's its 40th anniversary, there's some new things never before seen.
I think every man and woman who worked on this film said this was the toughest film that they'd worked on, just because the whole scope of it.
You want to find out what everybody else did and try and bring something new to the game and not fall into any sort of set cliches.
I'm getting letters from people all the time, you know, Bond fans, and that's another of the huge responsibilities that you want to live up to.
We do always go back to Fleming. I mean, the James Bond character is so complex.
You can go and hide in your trailer if you want to and let the other guys set up the shot and then come out and do the shot, but I really don't think that's the way to make a Bond picture.
I think Pe'ahi Jaws Maui is the pinnacle of big wave surfing. And it's only natural that they come here and pick Jaws because it's the most dangerous, biggest barrel in the world. And that just fits their script fantastically.
Jaws is a dangerous spot, you know. It can be extremely dangerous, but it's so dependent upon how the wave is breaking. I mean, a few feet underwater can make all the difference in the world. You can either get a free ride back up at the surface because you get in a pocket where the water's going up, or if you're a few feet to the wrong side, you can get in a current that's going down and you might not see the surface for a long time.
I was fortunate enough to be approached for this Bond project.
When you look for the best surfers in the world, you usually find them. You know, the fraternity knows who they are.
They want to do a segment for the film with big wave riding, and my friends and I actually kind of revolutionized big wave riding. We discovered a technique where we use jet skis to actually tow us onto the wave, and that allowed us to ride the biggest waves ever ridden.
We had them over for meetings and we made sure that they knew everything that was going on. We wardrobe fittings, how the night vision goggles would fit to vent so the water would come out and not restrict their vision, how we would attach rubber guns to a wetsuit that was designed and made for the shoot, which is a camouflage wetsuit. Then we had storyboards which they had to kind of meticulously follow, and then we left it to them to kind of realize those elements of it.
In terms of filming, you know, the waves are huge. You've got spray coming off the waves. Waves are so big they block your view of what's coming next, and you come over a swell and all of a sudden there's a giant wave with the guys on it doing their thing, so you really have to be on your toes.
It's not so much about putting yourself in a bad situation, it's more about using the camera to make it look like you're in a more serious position. Looking at the storyboards, I see like a wish list of images that they want to take place, and I think us as cameramen just need to use our instincts to do what we already know how to do and think of those images that have to be created from it. It's like part documentary and part feature film because you can't control really what they're going to do. You just have to use your camera work to get those images that the director hopefully wants to, you know, put in his movie.
We'll try to get as close to the most critical part of the wave as we can, which is the bowl section, I think, is the most spectacular part of the wave. So we'll be right on the edge of it, really in a relatively safe situation, but it's a real thrill. We have 2 cameras in the water. I'll be on a jet ski and Sonny will be in the jet boat, and we'll have another camera in the helicopter. So each angle is a very dynamic angle.
We have a lot of technology that we're applying with the jet boat and the gyro stabilizer, and I'm going to be trying to get more tight stuff, like using the lens and the gyro stabilization to get us some smooth shots. The camera's housed in like a waterproof bag. There's still a lot of valuable equipment. It would definitely be in the water if it went over.
Pretty difficult, huh, for launch?
It's all timing.
I think if the guy's down, you know, forget about the shot. I mean, if he's in a bad way, we're going in. We're not going to wait for anything. And really, you only have 20 seconds between waves, so you really can't wait. You know, when a guy goes down, he spends between 12 and 15 seconds underwater, and 15 seconds is a long hold down. That means that when he gets up, there's only 5 seconds for you to get him before the next wave comes.
You never see 3 guys on a wave out there, never. So the reason they don't do that is because there's not as much room for the surfer to maneuver.
The costumes they make it more difficult. They restrict your peripheral vision, which makes it hard to see the other surfers. You can kind of see what's going on the wave, but you know the other 2 guys are there, but you don't know where they are exactly. So it kind of restricts the movements that you can do surfing.
The pilot's able to put us close enough to get wet from the spray. I come on the jobs like this, and there's so much enthusiasm, and it's like riding a wave. You're picked up, and you just get so jacked up and so excited. It truly pushes everybody to the limits. It pushes the surfers, it pushes the photographers, it pushes the safety people.
We did a couple wipeouts, you know, where we'd run along the lip line and just lift into the air, and we'd be thrown into the abyss with all this white water.
Surfers don't like to fall off waves, and we had to have, you know, the story has to have two guys falling off and 1 guy making it, and it was very difficult to get the guys to fall off these waves, not only because it's really dangerous, but because they don't like to do it. They're not conditioned to do it. It's not in their bloodstream, if you will.
We may have been going out knowing we were shooting a motion picture, but our instincts took over. It was surfing, they were doing it in those costumes, and it was our obligation to visualize the shots we had to accomplish and accomplish them.
It's a religious experience to be in the presence of the power of these waves. On Earth, it's one of the few times that you can really see the power of God.
We've achieved part of the opening sequence of the 20th James Bond film, and it looks fantastic then, and people are going to come out of the theatre and say, wow, and then we've achieved something.
The hovercraft sequence represents the first major action piece of the movie. It is the piece that opens the movie. Now, in time-honored tradition, then you cut to the titles. Usually they get more and more spectacular as you go along, but the most interesting thing about it is not just a pasted-on pre-title sequence, it's actually very much part of the whole movie.
Action, Vincent!
Bond is sent into North Korea essentially to assassinate a rogue North Korean army officer who's out of control and running guns for diamonds. While there, he gets betrayed, he gets hung out to dry.
So that's gunshot, bang, he starts running, onto the tail, bang.
Nobody runs into shot. Chris will cue the fire department in. Nobody else goes in till that happens.
Okay, shooting now. Turn over.
Rolling.
There we go. And action.
Very good, very good. Everybody all right?
No joke. That's what's called the put your whole heart into it so you stay alive shot.
What does it take to be an actor in a James Bond movie? You definitely need balls to do what he does, which is get up every morning, run, jump, hang upside down, fall about, pretend to make love to a woman that's been cast from, and you've never met, and you meet her on the first day. You got to do all this stuff. And it is not the stuff that actors usually get into this profession for. They get into it to act, And the Bond movie is about acting, but also it's about action. And it's about this kind of, it's this unstoppable machine where poor old Pierce, every morning, sometimes you wake up and go, what am I doing today? Well, you're looking over your shoulder and the thing blows up there and that goes here and this goes there and you run over there. Okay, I'll do that. And every one of those things he has to be sharp on. He can't be dismissive of any of them. He can't go, oh, no, I'm a bit tired now. I think I'll do this one half-heartedly.
You're in front of the camera. And how do you make it look like it's just effortless? Some days you're graced with that, and some days it doesn't come that gracefully, and you have to creak it in there, push it in there. They're enormous pieces. There's so many people involved.
This isn't his first one, obviously, so you just kind of point in a certain direction. He's going to do things his own way, the way he's done them in the past. Very aggressive, very gung-ho, and he does it all. I mean, he's leaping and jumping and rolling around the ground.
The fact is that these films are very, very physically demanding on the actor playing James Bond. And I mean, Pierce does a lot of his own stunts, and he's very athletic. And as we all know, athletes take a real pounding. So, things do take their toll, and he had a knee injury, and he was fantastic about it.
Well, it was a bit scary because I blew my knee out. I blew my meniscus, and that just about did my head in. I did, because here we are, we're in February, and it was on the back lot of the studio, and it's where Bond is captured. He's about to be shot. All hell breaks loose, and he has to make a dash. He finds a way out on a hovercraft. It's a 200-yard dash. They'd set it up for about 3-4 hours in the morning. It was around 11:30, and I didn't warm up, and I just went for it. You feel guilt. I've blown it here. Production's gonna close down because of me. So you have to get your head around that one.
He was fantastic about it. As soon as we could have it taken care of, he had it taken care of, and he was almost bionic in his recovery.
Saved by the Bell. It's great to be out and about. Yeah, Pinewood gets a bit kind of cramped after a while, you know. Everyone's chomping at the bit here, so this is it. Aldershot, mate. You know, gone to the sunny beaches, the cocktails, bloody Aldershot. But it's good, you know, it's nice being with Vic Armstrong and the boys, the action unit boys. And we're doing this sequence here on the old hovercrafts. Trying to look as if I know what I'm doing, as usual.
Bond. No, because you got Bond and then the baddie.
Another day. Try another day.
Let's do this with Bonded foreground wide, and then we move up there, and hopefully get that before we go to Long Valley, yeah? At the moment, we're shooting the opening sequence, which is going to be the pre-title credit sequence, which is the hovercraft chase.
Vic has all the fun, and I end up shooting in overheated studios with the actors. That's the joke, but that's also the reality. The main unit shoots the actors, and we have to shoot the drama, and we shoot some small-scale action, fist fights, shoot 'em up, so things like that. Bond runs down corridor, the walls blow up behind him, stuff like that. When it gets into massive action involving vehicles, aircraft, underwater, that's when the action units come into it.
We started at the compound, Moon's compound, which is at the studios. The gate you can see behind me is our linking piece of set work, if you like, that'll link the Long Valley here in Aldershot with the studio, where Bond has stolen the hovercraft and is escaping, chasing Moon with his big hovercraft full of munitions.
I'm very suspicious of them. I didn't like them very much because they float and they have no traction. You can't turn them fast. They don't seem to corner like vehicles. They float on air, so they steer very oddly. They don't steer at all. You can't turn them on a dime. They actually don't even go in a straight line. They seem to drift because they float on air. But also they have a huge drawback. They can't go up slopes. They slow down. So they're really only good on flat ground. So in terms of designing the chase, it became apparent that we had to pull out a lot of tricks to make it look more exciting than it is.
They might lack a little bit of speed, but we can manufacture that in the camera. So, and these are perfectly designed to under-crank. You know, they're all very smooth lines and smooth movement, so you get no fast change of direction. All the guys driving them now, apart from the large hovercraft, are all my guys, and they've been training for now 5 weeks, and they're really, really good. They can get them very accurate. But they are strange things. You look at them and you think they're out of control, but they're actually being driven in that way. That's how you drive them. It's just almost sideways. You go one way and then you have to think about 3 turns ahead and turn them again. But I do think it's interesting looking. There's something alien about the way they do slide.
This thing rips your head off with noise. It's a living. Look at the ship fly. That's great. Trees going everywhere. Amazing. You can never get me.
Some B, take 3.
Who's bankrolling your makeovers out? Oh. He got this tip in Hong Kong about this gene therapy clinic, and Zhao is supposed to be here, and Zhao is the man that he wants.
My character goes to a clinic in Cuba where he goes through a process where he changes his identity, but in the end it's thwarted by Bond. The diamonds were pretty unique. You know, a throwback to what the escapism of Bond was. It goes back to, the days of Jaws, and there's some sort of distortion to their physical appearance.
Got it. Cut.
Rick! Bang!
The film starts in Korea, which is so bleak and depressing, and it's quite dark, and the whole torture sequence is, we haven't seen that before in a Bond film. So when he goes to Cuba, it should have this wonderful panache and flair.
supposed to be Cuba. We're in Cadiz, Spain. It's like 40 degrees. We have the rain coming down. Before we get in the rain, we have to get spritzed down with water and dirt.
Action!
Slipping all over the place, and Pierce, after an injury, is running across this field after an explosion. Halle Berry running up this hill, soaking wet in a dress.
It has been really cold, and I've been wet in all of my scenes in a little sundress and barefoot, and it's been a little chilly. Yeah, but you know, that's part of it.
Okay.
I remember Lee looked at me one day and he said, "This is what you wanted to do, darling. You signed up." And I said, "Yes, I did, and I love it."
It's a little bit chilly. Looks good though, actually, from my angle. I forgot to act. But that does happen from time to time.
Our problem has been really the weather here.
It's pretty cold and drafty and not as bright as we'd hoped.
This is one of the worst series of storms on record. Right now, we're sort of in the eye of the storm. We've had battled it rain, wind, and cloud cover for the past 4 days, 5 days, and there's no end in sight.
And we're in the crapper. We're out of here on Wednesday.
In a film, you've got to keep going, and you just can't shut down for a week.
It's all a bit sad. Sad, really. Yeah. I'm going to cut our losses, go on Wednesday. Yeah. And then they'll figure out whether to come back here or do it on the back lot, I guess. There you go.
I feel a warm front coming on is probably a line that we could put in the film.
We've had 5 days of hell, and this is our first day of sunshine. The weather report looks foul, and there's no point in doing a great romantic 3-page scene between your leading lady and your leading man in appalling weather. I'd be the first to want to stay, but I just don't know. It's a very hair-raising call to make. You could turn up tomorrow morning and there could be gales and storms, and we would have made the wrong decisions.
It's when Jinx first meets Bond, so that's a big scene for Pierce and I. And because it's been so cold and rainy, it didn't lend for the romance that scene needed. And it was supposed to be at sunset with wine and very romantic and seductive, and it's just too cold. You know, you can't do it like this. That's not sexy.
The forecast we got today was very bad. Yeah. So we called the guy in the American Air Base over there, Rota, and he said, "What's wrong with your website? They keep saying it's thunderstorms and it's rain." And he said, "No," he said, "it's going to be a beautiful day today and tomorrow. It'd be great to do it here if we could, because otherwise, with your stop date, it makes it very difficult back in the studios. We'll have to rebuild the set. It'll be good." Let's do it. All right.
Things have looked up. All day we've had the sun, so I think we're going to be here tomorrow. I think we'll get Halle's scene. This is her big scene, her entrance into the movie, so spirits are good. And we'll wake up in the morning and see and hope that all is clear, and I'm sure it will be.
In the script, right from the beginning, there was the situation which we all wanted, I think, which was an homage to the Ursula Andress bikini. But obviously we didn't want exactly the same bikini. And anyway, Halle is a very different modern kind of, more modern kind of actress. And we've come up with this electric orange, very revealing and sexy bikini, and a very beautifully crafted diving belt, which fits exactly on the top of her hips at the point where her bikini ends. And the buckle on the belt, because her character's called Jinx, the stainless steel buckle on the belt is a J.
Well, it's my freezing shot of the film, I can tell you that, but this is supposed to rival Ursula Andress, and I don't know if I can do that.
There's been a great deal of anticipation, hot anticipation, and no wonder. I think she's got the most fantastic figure for a bikini that you could ever have.
Because Desmond Llewellyn is no longer with us, we wanted to kind of register his absence. There's now the new Q is John Cleese, but we wanted him to say a line that just, "I never joke about my work," which was the sort of famous line that Desmond Llewellyn said in Goldfinger. And we just thought that that was a nice tribute to him.
You must be joking.
As I learned from my predecessor, Bond, I never joke about my work. Well, it seemed a little strange that Desmond wasn't here, because having played his assistant and having had the most wonderful conversations with him, because he was not just a lovely guy, he told wonderful stories.
There's so many people here who I've met over the years who worked with Father, and they all have lovely memories of him, which is tremendous.
Well, I think the spirit of Desmond is in every Bond movie and will always be there. Desmond Llewellyn created this character of Q so many years ago. He was always one of the highlights of every Bond film.
Well, it was quite interesting because my father, of course, wasn't really sort of successful until the last few Bonds. I mean, he was there, but it was always just a part that came bit by bit. So though we grew up with it, it didn't become the sort of huge, phenomenal world until quite late on. But it was always tremendous fun.
Everybody loves the Q scenes. Everybody wants to see what gadgets Bond's going to get and what Q might be up to.
When we wrote that new scene, I was very concerned that we didn't just have John Cleese take over and be Desmond Llewellyn. When he appeared in the last movie, he was almost like an assistant. I thought it was definitely time to kind of move him forward. So we decided to make him Q, not R. We needed to give him a costume, an attitude, a character all of his own.
You might mention it is 007, but a perfect marksman isn't really supposed to shoot his own boss.
It was an opportunity to sort of play a scene between Bond and the new Q that explained to people in a subtle way what Q stands for, which is quartermasters.
Give me the old firing range any day, Quartermaster.
And so hopefully that scene sort of marks the passing of Desmond, shows Bond not wanting to call him Q at the beginning, and then awarding him the kind of endearment of Q.
Just took a few seconds, Q.
Wish I could make you vanish. Basically, he has not to like Bond, or else the scenes aren't any fun.
So, this is where they keep the old relics, then, eh?
I'll have you know, this is where our most cutting-edge technology is developed. Q's attitude is, don't damage the gadgets. And if it means you're going to get killed, well, preferably don't damage the gadgets anyway, you know. And that's what it's all about. And he sees Bond as this playboy who is irresponsible and not acting his age. And that's what it's always going to be about. ultra-high frequency single-digit sonic agitator unit. The funny thing about learning gobbledygook is that some bits of it you get very easily, and then there will just be one phrase, like I couldn't get target seeking shotguns. Plus all the usual refinements, ejector torpedoes, target seeking shotguns, Whereas the quite difficult bit about tiny cameras on all sides. Project the image they see onto a light-emitting polymer skin on the opposite side. That was quite simple. Aston Martin call it the Vanquish, we call it the Vanish.
This Aston Martin Vanquish is just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. I have the book and I've looked at how they built it. And I realised for people who are aficionados of cars or technical stuff, they must love it because it's as imaginary as it can get.
I despise technology in all its forms. It's exactly like Desmond, and in fact, exactly like Pierce. I can make very, very few things work.
Is that flash all right? That's okay, we can't see it beyond the top.
Okay, all right, fine. I've had trouble with ordinary pencils sometimes, and I'm not even talking about propelling pencils. So I'm really extremely badly qualified to play this role, but I got it anyway.
I wanted to, for it being the 20th Bond movie and the 40th anniversary and all that, I wanted to bring back all the old gadgets from the old movies, so we hustled up as many as we could find. Alligators from here, and we've got the briefcase and Rosa Kleb's shoe, and we've got the jetpack from Thunderball. We've dragged them all out. The aficionados might spot them all. We thought we'd give a pathos and a touch of history.
Given that there's no other films that have been going this long, it would be a bit miserable not to sort of have some fun with that legacy.
Now, new watch, this will be your 20th, I believe.
How time flies.
We thought that for this one it would be nice to get back to a bit more of the glamour and scale of some of the older Bond movies. And there are elements that you'd only get in a Bond movie that you wouldn't get in Die Hard and normal action movies.
You know, this place was just built entirely for this one night.
The world of Bond should have this kind of otherworldly, larger-than-life aspect to it, so it's something that doesn't exist in the real world. Barbara Broccoli had seen in a magazine about this ice hotel that gets built every year in Sweden, and that seemed like a fantastic visual feast.
We got excited about it, and of course the first thing we did was call Peter Lamont.
And he went up and stayed there.
And he stayed overnight there. You know, if you have a challenge, give it to Peter Lamont.
I went to see the ice hotel, and it's, you know, because it's frozen snow, you can't build it that big. We have to have structure. We went to a whole number trying to achieve this icy look. So now you've seen it. Now we've got this blue on top. Then the fellas come round with, it's like a transparent sugar glass. It's a kind of a plastic, so they kind of spoon it on, and you get these kind of icicles hanging down. Then other fellas come round with a stirrup pump, which you believe, with candle wax. This is a part we've already used, and then you see we've also used glitter on it just to kind of get that twinkle.
It holds a great fascination for me. Men who create images like Peter Lamont, men who dream dreams and then they grow with sticks and nails. I looked at the plans, I saw the drawings for the Ice Palace. I would visit the set and watch this thing being put together and watch the concrete pilings go down 30 feet, watch the steel girders go in, being bolted, being welded. And knowing then that you are going to work on the set, you are going to be performing, this is your stage. That is the joy of doing Bond. Vodka martini, plenty of ice. You can spare it.
James, here for the penguins this time, or for the view again? It was massive. I'd never been on a set that large before, ever. And my next question was, does this place really exist somewhere?
I want you to look out this way and then you can swing back.
Yeah. Beautiful Iceland, yes.
Absolutely.
The script initially had us turning up in Iceland to an ice palace built by our villain, and then that was pretty much it. There was a car chase, I remember being in there, but it was always somewhere. It drove around over volcanoes and geysers or something like that.
We'd written it and there was the ice palace, but Lee rightly pointed out, well, you've got this fantastic ice palace, but you only have a couple of dialogue scenes in there. And so he said, let's sink the ice palace and have a car chase inside it.
Supposing we had a car chasing there. Well, everything's possible, you know, they meant put it in structural steel.
So of course we went back to the drawing board and then had to add all that steel work in, and in some points we had already constructed half the set and we then had to cut into the set a new steel frame just to run the cars on it. We've shot our first, the opening scene, which is it's in its pristine state. Now we're going to where the ice palace is starting to melt, and Bond is now in the car chase, chasing the baddie.
We're gonna have a car chase in here. Bond and I face off again.
In the roof of the ice palace, we've got water pipes there that's going to send down cascades of water, somewhere in the region of 27,000 gallons a minute. And the problem we've got then is it's going to collect in the centre of the floor there, and it's not going to be able to get off the set. So what we're doing now is cutting channels to allow the water to drop into the water tank, which is below. We've got hundreds of things that are going to collapse and break. They'll be racing around on the upper floors. There's missiles, there'll be parts of walls exploding. The car will be running into parts of the wall and that will be collapsing.
The Ice Palace just never let you down. It was like going to work in a big theme park or something. I think it's fantastic that that is in the 007 stage, which is just such a kind of iconic building. I think it's so fantastic that that still looms large on the horizon of Pinewood Studios, and it's what Kobe created to fulfill his dream for something bigger and better than had ever been seen.
We did find this one ice lagoon, which is very famous, known as, I think it's a Jökulsárlón, which basically means a lake full of icebergs. And they get trapped in this lake because they can't get out because there's a very narrow body of water that takes them out to sea. I sat there and looked at this and thought, well, we better stage the ice palace here because this will look fantastic. And then I thought, what happens when this freezes over? And the guy said, well, it freezes over, all the icebergs stay frozen, solid, locked in place. I thought, well, this is spectacular. What if we put cars on here and have a car chase on ice? I know we've seen cars on ice before, but never like this, not amongst icebergs, giant ones, 40, 50 feet high, sometimes several hundred yards across, tunnels of ice, quite astonishing. And the guy said, well, no one's ever done it, but you can put vehicles on it if it freezes over. So the most hair-raising aspect of the whole procedure, once we decided to go that way, was Iceland sits in a Gulf Stream, and often the ice doesn't freeze up solid enough to put the vehicles on.
We've had some trouble in Iceland. When we went there before Christmas, it was freezing nicely. But over Christmas, we had a thaw. Very warm, rainy weather came in. So Iceland's thawed out. It's maybe one of the few years where the lagoon does not freeze. We're looking at alternatives. We've been up to some places in Scandinavia. We might also go to Alaska. That's another possibility.
Alaska's not confirmed at this time because it's expensive and we don't officially have the permit and we don't have work permits for the crew.
Hi, yeah, Kenny? Because of the time pressure, whether we go to Alaska or Iceland, we are now going to have to fly the equipment wherever we go. We can't take anything by ship at the moment.
Iceland is not cancelled, but currently the ice is not thick enough. And the chances are, although it's freezing, it's possibly 8 or 9 inches thick, but we need 24 inches. And the chances of that happening in the next week or two is unlikely.
We're keeping our fingers crossed. The option to go to Alaska is obviously going full steam ahead as if we are going to go to Alaska. But nothing has been decided yet. I think the middle of next week will probably be the cut-off time when we have to make that decision.
Normally the setup time for something like this, to set this up, would take, I would normally want 6 weeks, and even that is a short period of time. But because we changed course, went to Alaska and then came back, I was only left with 2 weeks, so it was a bit of a scramble to get this ready. You know, we had trucks and things to bring over, and on the trip over we lost a wardrobe bus, sort of something like 18 tons worth of wardrobe bus got blown off the road. You know, we have gusting winds, up to 180 miles an hour, snowstorms. The main concern for the crew when they got here was the safety on the ice, because ice is very unpredictable, and we have to ensure that the crew feels safe.
200 people is a lot of weight, and of course all the gear as well. So our biggest issue is making sure we're spread out, that we don't have everybody bunched together in one place, and so therefore putting too much pressure on the ice in one particular area.
What they feel is that if the ice does break, it'll put a wheel through or it'll half go through. It won't just disappear from view that quickly. All the cars have got flotation bags, which the driver hopefully will pull before he leaves. That will make the car buoyant. It'll still be submerged, but it allows us to recover the vehicle.
We have to test it, so whenever we have a location given to us, we try and get ahead of everybody else, drill some holes. So for example, this morning they wanted to put a camera position near to an iceberg. We send somebody in, they drill a test hole to find out that the ice is thick enough. As long as within our parameters, we're happy for people to work there. And then we do a check around the area to make sure that that particular iceberg doesn't look like it's going to do anything strange, and that there's nothing going to fall off it that's obviously going to happen. Once we've cleared that, then the film crews can move in and use that area.
But the required thickness varies with temperature, you see. So at the moment 30 centimetres is well safe. If it got warmer it might change though. Perfect day for filming.
Bravo, take 2.
in our heated workshop, we're barely above freezing. As you saw, the icicles are still frozen on the cars. Out there, we're getting wind chills of about minus 22 to 25. You really can't show any skin at all. You've got to cover up and grin and bear it. We've had batteries freezing. That's the first thing. The batteries just don't like it. We have to try and keep them warm. We've had the gearboxes first thing in the morning when they're really cold after a night at minus 15 or whatever it is up here. Very sluggish to get warm. When there is snow on the ice, it accumulates around axles and things, and the cars start getting sluggish. We have to bring them in, thaw out all of the ice around the axles and drive shafts. Brakes freeze on, tyres freeze to the floor. Yeah, it's a whole new experience. We've been out on the ice testing, highly successful, I have to say. Too much grip on the Aston, believe it or not. It drove just like it was on tarmac. The spiked tyres that we had made by Yokohama, unbelievable. It's just like driving a car on normal road. So we've actually had to have normal tyres studded to give less grip to allow the guys to work the car.
Today is pretty dramatic, actually. It's quite eerie walking around on a lake, you know, it's 1,000 feet deep where we're standing, and we're walking on top of it, and there's slushy water on the ice, so you know there's an inch of water in a lot of places, so you can't help but feeling the thickness of the ice is starting to deteriorate. So we've got our safety guys keeping a close eye on that, but it's just purely the temperature rise.
We've got a nice warm wind. About +7 the temperature. We're drilling the ice about every half hour just to make sure that we're not losing any depth off the ice.
The dragster's getting ready to come onto the ice, and that will join us there as well.
There, yeah. So we start with 2 cars there, then dragster.
Yeah, it's only one car. There's an car coming onto the ice to go over there as well.
I'm paranoid about making the audience realise that it is an ice lake, so we've made all the moves in the chase ice orientated. In other words, they've got big spins and slides in them, so we're utilising, you know, what the ice can give us that a tarmac road can't. So we've got, you know, a couple of 180-degree turns in it, lots of broad power slides sideways, and again we've had all these cars built by the special effects. They've done an incredible job. They've built them all 4-wheel drive purely for this, so we've done some fantastic big long power slides with them and things like that. And we had a helicopter here with the West Cam on, so we've had the chance to do some great aerial coverage of it as well. And I think the ballet aspect of it all looks so great from the air. You get a whole different view of it. The 2 drivers, Ray DeHaan and George Cottle, are absolutely brilliant. I'm so impressed with them. We did a shot yesterday where Ray DeHaan had to rear end the Jag, but obviously there's, you know, a few £100,000 into each of these cars. We don't want to write them off, but we still have to get the shot for the movie. So it's a very, very precision tap that Ray had to give George on the rear quarter. So we had to nudge him, we had to have a contact, and his precision in hitting him and then backing off and letting George spin away was absolutely fantastic. But the thing they have to watch with on the ice, it's great getting the slides and everything else, but if you do happen to dig into some of this snow, you could flip, you know, it'll suddenly get traction, right, sliding sideways, and then you get one of these pressure ridges, which some of them can be 3 or 4 inches high. So it's like sliding sideways into a curb. It could flip you, or certainly damage the car pretty severely, but it's so easy just to overcook it and just spin out.
As it turned out, we were blessed with just an unusually low temperatures that froze the ice just enough. The guys are up there at the moment shooting fantastic stuff, unbelievable stuff. I've never seen anything like it. Just racing cars at top speed, backwards, upside down, firing rockets, everything amongst the most spectacular terrain. Something about this stuff I've never seen before, and I've become far more enamoured of it. And it's not fair to say so, but sometimes you watch second unit stuff and it can become a bit You know, it's just you watch everything. The second unit, the action units, print everything. So you watch the same stuff over and over and over. And I have to watch it all, but it becomes a little tedious just watching this stuff. But this stuff I can't get enough of. Bond movies are going to have to approach the day when they're not shot on film anymore. That's going to happen. The manipulations that allows you now with dealing with the digital technology are endless and effortless. And I think some of the stuff we're doing in this, in terms of the big stunt effect sequences, are only going to be a precursor to what is going to follow in the next generation of Bond movies. The high-end action sequences that are done for real are still going to exist, but I think that it's going to be half of them will exist for real and half of them will be augmented with. And sometimes they may move into entirely digital special effects that way.
He's been very adventurous on this film. And I think I'm pretty sure that was a conscious decision, that he wanted to take Bond into this millennium in terms of technology. And we've certainly done that. You know, it is the first Bond where we've used major league CG. The script changed from its very first incarnation, but one sequence that remained right from the very beginning was the ice wave. And I could see immediately there was going to be a great deal of digital visual effects involvement.
By far the most unnerving stuff was Bond hanging off an ice wall in a world that didn't exist, which is a computer-generated world. That kind of really sent a lot of us into paroxysms of fear, if you will. My part in it is actually pretty minimal. Hanging Pierce on certain rigs and against blue screens was very easy. The tough part comes in the back end of this, once we have to start putting the rest of it in and making it real, because it will either stand or fall on whether this stuff works or not.
We very quickly set up a team, a CG team, doing R&D on water and ice, which this particular team had some experience of from other movies, Perfect Storm and various other films, but the way that we were going to use both the water and the ice was totally different and new and quite cutting edge, especially for a Bond film. You know, Bond films obviously have the reputation for doing as much as possible, absolutely for real. And this suddenly was an environment that we were going to create that was totally synthetic. I went with a very small aerial team up to Spitsbergen and shot all the material for the cliffs and the ice, which was an incredible shoot. I mean, just amazing. The amount of effort that's gone into that very tiny sequence is quite astonishing. One of the biggest challenges of the ice wave was that there was nowhere to hide in terms of the look. We were in broad daylight, full sunshine, and we had to create a totally CG environment which consisted entirely of ice, very difficult, water, quite difficult. That was a tremendous challenge. So here we have the final sequence of the ice wave. Fully rendered in CG environment, fully rendered in some cases CG bond, blue screen bond. Again, CG ice, CG water. And various live action elements. It started life as a very basic animatic, which Mark has got here, just to block out the storyboard frames. The beam cuts the ice cliff off, ice cliff falls, and creates the wave that Bond is going to surf on. And there's a lot more shots in this animatic than ended up in the final sequence. It's been cut down, rearranged as it's evolved. So Top Shot doesn't exist anymore. Very basic CG geometry, easy, quick, easy to change, easy to re-render. We knew we still had to do close-ups of Pierce, so we tested a camera rig and a rig for Pierce to be shot on a blue screen. We shot a lot of elements, some of which have been used for interaction, for Bond's interaction with the water, and also because floating in the water and being carried with the wave are huge icebergs, and those icebergs obviously have to interact with the water as well. So spray, foam, splashes, every kind of interaction we actually shot as elements out at Pinewood. Some of those have been used and some of them have been recreated as CG. I think what Sunnyside have achieved in terms of the level of reality is extraordinary, both with the ice and with the water. But all those things have taken basically a year to develop. The finished result is that you believe that those icebergs are sitting suspended in that water. Each iceberg, depending on its size, has a certain weight, and you can feel the volume and you can see the base of the iceberg through the water and through the interaction. And it really is quite stupendous. I think one of the things that I'm particularly proud of, that is almost a throwaway thing, is the satellite. The design of it I love, and the concept of the satellite works really well. You only see it a few times and it's usually in the course of an action sequence. But if you actually look at the object itself and how it works, it's a combination of a miniature that was shot motion control and some very, very beautiful computer-generated elements as well. It's a very beautiful thing. I'm very happy with the satellite. The other sequence, which emerged soon after we started shooting, was the end sequence, the Antonov sequence, which, by virtue of the fact that it's all airborne, was going to be major league visual effects. And we had a 12th scale miniature of the entire plane. Because the Antonov is such a tremendously big aircraft, at 12th scale the wingspan of that model was still approximately 20 feet across. It was all shot with a motion control rig linked to a model mover on a green screen stage. So the Antonov goes into the Icarus beam and gets pretty well torched. So we cut to the exterior of the Antonov and it's gradually disintegrating. So it's been shot in separate passes with various levels of disintegration. So the model unit, as they were shooting it, gradually stripped back panels on the model to simulate the damage. There's a pass just for the lights on the plane. There's a pass for tracking, so that we've got the movement of the plane. The computer can take the move out of the, extract the camera move from the film using the tracking markers. We should have a beauty pass against black. And these are built up as layers to give the final result. There is a CG plane in there, but it's an invisible model. It's a very rough model that we've used as a collision model to wrap smoke and flame around, for the culmination of the whole destruction of the Antonov, because all the smoke and flame in that sequence is computer generated, so you have to have an object or a virtual object to wrap all that around. So there's an invisible CG component in there as well, but it's basically it's miniature.
Bond. James Bond.
I mean, every kid has a dream, wants to work on a Bond film on some level, so...
You think I'd leave this in the hands of the British?
I'm the first American to ever be an editor on a Bond movie, so bringing me over here and letting me have free reign, which they really did. It was a process of me learning about Lee and his way of doing things. He does a lot of cutting in the camera. He knows what he's doing. He's very focused. And what I try to do is take that footage and make it a little bit stylized.
Christian, my editor, has been cutting it very fast and very progressively modern, and I use that phrase advisedly because I'm always a little hesitant myself about that kind of music video approach to action.
I think one of the things that I like about editing the most is that I like to keep the camera moving as much as possible, because if it's moving all the time and there's a certain flow, for a very long time, I think before MTV came out, the theory behind editing was that the best edited film was a film where you never saw the edits. I think that theory is past gone. You know, I think films like The Matrix and John Woo films and Michael Bay, just it's a flurry. It's a flurry of eye candy. I wanted to bring that kind of editing style into the Bond thing to kind of make it a little bit more hip, I guess is as close as I can get. When I started doing that, you know, this family has been together for 40 years because they had been doing it a certain way for so long. And the new style of editing with the speed ramps and all that stuff, they were a little thrown back. And then when we started putting the movie together and seeing how people were reacting to it, they really, really warmed up to it, and it became a lot of fun.
What we didn't want to end up with was just another car chase where the cars roared along and had squealing tires and they're on ice, for God's sake. We're going to try and avoid all these cliches. But we're using a device known as speed ramping, which is no stranger to television commercials, music videos, or even some movies now.
This shot was shot at this speed, running across the glacier and then revealing the two cars in the ice. And then they came closer and went out of frame.
You increase and decrease the speed of the film at alarming rates, very fast, very slow, according to however you want to use it. And it's usually to do with music or to do with the pace of things.
It's all very nice and shows geography very well, but it's also very time consuming. So I get ideas like this. So I will high speed across the glacier field, slow down to show what we have going, and then keep it going as fast as possible, just because it's a I'm not a big advocate of cutting just for the sake of cutting. If there's a crane shot that takes, you know, 9 or 10 feet to complete, let it ride out because it's a beautiful shot. There's no reason to interfere with what I believe was the director's vision of how he wanted that to happen. There's no reason just to cut for cutting's sake, because that just makes for confusion, number one, and number two, it's my feeling of it's a way of getting out of a problem, and if there's no problem in a shot, then why not stay on it? The only science for action editing is story. You'll watch films that have action sequences and there won't be any really story involved, it's just car chase. When I look at the footage, I like to think about what is the reasoning behind why this car went there. This represents a 3 times around chase, which became too long, so we made it 2. we decided that Bond would use his invisible car at this time. So when Zhao started revving up his engine and going, and just as Zhao is about to hit him, he makes it invisible. But before that, you see an insert of metal pegs coming out of the tires, and he rolls up the side of the back of a wall, and Zhao comes off and 40 feet in the air and lands and dies, and the car appears almost vertical on the wall. It reappears and then rolls back down and goes back downstairs again. So that was the death sequence that was come up with way after the beginning of shooting and right towards the end of editing. I find dialogue scenes to be my favorite scenes because it's more old-time filmmaking when there's dialogue going on. So the scene in the hothouse I felt was a lot of fun and really well done.
You never thought of looking inside your own organization?
The Icarus presentation I never really liked because it was just so long and there was too much going on because they were looking at the presentation. We were up in space, Pierce and Halley were down looking at other people in the crowd, and there was just too many stories going on, and for that to translate took so long. So what we had to do is we had to get rid of certain parts of the 5 stories that were within the one scene, and it was hard to let some of those go because it was like, well, how is that going to affect it later on? I think the most important thing for me as an editor is when I'm cutting scene 2, I still got to think about scene 185 because how is this going to affect this, and keeping the big picture in my head. Using the Avid is a highly, highly advantageous thing. A, because I can cut with 8 tracks of sound. B, I can have up to 20 layers of video, and there's a sequence in the hospital where Bond is actually meditating himself into a state where he can get his heart rate down, and there was multi-layers of dissolves and things going on, and it was 9 layers of video, and the great thing about that is that before you couldn't see any kind of pre-visualization about what that was going to be like until you sent it to the lab. A week later, maybe you got one of the dissolves back, but here I could do 9 layers of dissolves and cross and do all that stuff. I have never been able to separate my life as far as when I go home, I don't think about editing. That's not true. I always think about it. I'm laying in bed at night and I'm thinking, well, if I just, what if I try this tomorrow? What if I do this? And so it is very emotional.
I always felt like the best part of the Bond movie is the opening 10 seconds, because you got the gun barrel, and for that 10 seconds, potentially the best Bond movie ever made is about to start. Because it's almost like it's impossible now to make the greatest Bond film ever, because the greatest Bond film ever is made up of all tiny bits of all the other, 20 films now. Can't beat the sound of 85 people in a room putting everything into a performance. It's quite an isolating job being a composer. For most of the time you're spending 15, 16 hours a day in a dark room with the door shut, looking at these people doing what they're doing on the screen and trying to find music which is going to work for it, and you do that 7 days a week for 3.5 months, and you emerge at the end of it blinking and pale and having lived on junk food and sat down on your backside for 3.5 months wishing you could be a bit healthier, and you come into a fantastic studio like this and you record it with fantastic musicians, and that's kind of it. It's like you don't really get to meet that many people. Your world is the world of the music, of the movie. I mean, each one of these movies presents you with the same mountain to climb, but a different set of obstacles in the way. And all you know is that you can't really take the same route that you took last time. In a way, you know, you could write the same score to the same, you know, 3 movies if you really wanted to. You know, the character is essentially the same, and he's essentially doing the same things in not dissimilar situations. You know, he's being chased or he's chasing, and he's with a girl or he's not with a girl, and he's getting his gadgets and he's using them or he's not. You know, so I mean, the situations that Bond find himself in stay fairly constant, you know, from one film to the next, with obviously, you know, occasional dramatic differences. With Bond, it's like it's a complete world, it's its own universe. The worst thing about action music is just such a lot of notes. You know, it's just like the page is black with notes, and you know, a lot of them are 6 or 7 minutes long, these sequences, and they're usually quite fast. So nice slow music is less notes, so it's a little bit easier as well. As a musician, you know, you always kind of look for like an emotional input to a sequence. You know, sometimes another explosion or another gunshot doesn't give you that. So it's nice when, you know, you get the occasional moments like with Jinx. I tend to save the Bond theme, Monty Norman's Bond theme, I tend to save that until Bond does something, you know, typically Bond-esque. Sometimes if he's in danger, you know, I mean, I'll play it in a darker style, but, you know, I mean, when he comes out over the top of that ice wave, you know, there's really only one thing to play. What I was trying to do on this film, more than perhaps the others, is to try and work with the sound of the orchestra a little differently. I recorded in the hovercraft chase and on the ice chase, I recorded all the strings and the brass and woodwind separately, so I could put them into the computer and actually chop them up and have them playing backwards and upside down, and, you know, distorting them and throwing things in the surround. So you know, there are moments in the hovercraft chase and in the ice chase where orchestral phrases will be playing backwards at the back of the theatre, and then they'll kind of travel around the surrounds to the front where they kind of, you know, solidify, and then other things will be spinning around, you know, so you're kind of playing with the technology a little bit. Of actually writing the music for the chase forwards, then phonetically kind of reversing it, so the music that the musicians play is phonetically backwards of the phrase that I want to hear, and then I get them to play that, and then the recording that they make, I flip it over so it comes back the right way. But ultimately, when you're writing Bond music, it has to sound like Bond music, no matter how many tricks and things that you throw at it, and no matter how contemporary you would like to try and make it feel with electronics and chopping up bits and pieces and distorting things. You know, I think an audience always expects to hear a kind of orchestral presence, you know, to kind of keep harking back to the, you know, the brilliant stuff that John created, you know, and that's that signature sound. So, and as long as I'm doing it, I'm never going to get away from that, you know, because it's, I mean, you'd be stupid to, because it's just perfect.
I tried to build these little moments of very, very old Bond movies in there, create new characters, old characters, Cuban characters, you know, a sense of espionage. There's Cold War, Korea.
We both go back to what Cubby taught us. One of the most important things he said to us, I think, was, you know, don't screw it up. Fleming had created this character. They had created a whole film genre. He used to say, everybody will try and mess with it.
It's quite like doing an independent film, you know, sort of low-budget film, and that's from the point of view of the passion.
You know, I grew up watching Bond and sort of fantasizing about being in that world of mystery and intrigue.
Bond used to be the only real event movie. Now there are big blockbusters always being made. But the one thing that the Bond films have is that the hero operates in a world that you'd like to be in.
When I was a kid, everybody talked about the Bond.
What's he gonna do next time?